This is my first options video here, so we'll see how I go. I'm shooting for C minus to D plus work, so don't get your hopes up. But it's regarding the Snapchat IPO and Snapchat options. I was somewhat vocal from my Twitter account last week and up through this week regarding options. I was guessing that the weekly options would be priced at 120% vol, and then saying that I'd be stunned if the weekly options came in with volatility under 90%, which would mark the straddle at plus or minus 10%. I was thinking that because just looking at how that stock traded, you had 10% daily moves. So for it to move 10% in 1 week, I thought was a pretty reasonable expectation. And I thought implied volatility would reflect that. So I submitted what I thought would be a bargain basement bid at 75% volatility prior to options opening last Friday for the weekly options. And the market makers were kind enough to fill me at my offer price, at my bid. And of course, options opened at 60%. So I immediately took a 25% haircut on where I could have had the options for. However, I thought that at 75%, Snapchat options was still extremely underpriced relative to expected realized volatility. Sure enough, I was correct. I made some money on it, but not nearly as much money as I should have. Had I been able to get filled at a better price, but that's my own problem. So the options open with volatility under 60%. And, looking across the board, that was weekly options. I think April options and July options were 55% and maybe, even lower than that for July. And I just couldn't believe how cheap options were across the board. And saying I'd be surprised if both Friday's straddle, the one that expired yesterday on March 17th, and April straddles didn't get covered. Well, let's fast forward a week later there, options, Chris. And what happened? Snap managed to cover its weekly straddle in less than 2 trading days and managed to cover its April monthly straddle in 1 week. So I wasn't surprised that it covered the straddles. I was surprised that it covered them so quickly. And even with that realized vol move, I reiterated my straddle stance that I'd be surprised if it doesn't cover the 12.4% move that the April options were pricing in as of yesterday, right? So, yesterday alone, the stock moved 5% from open to low. We had a 5% move from open to low. In the last hour of trade, the stock moved something like 2.5% from 19 to a little bit above 1950 and closed above 1950. So you had a 2.5% move in 1 hour, right? A 5% move from open to low within the first hour and a half of trade yesterday. And in that 1 week time frame, the straddle opened somewhere around 60%. So here was last week, a week ago from Friday, March 17th, 8 days to expiration, vol marked at 60%, straddle opens around $1.60. It actually ticked down to, what was it, like 56% or so, because it actually started trading right around $1.50 for the $23 straddle last week. I couldn't believe it. That was unbelievable. I was blown away by that. And unfortunately, I didn't load the boat on Snapchat straddles. Like all great trades, you always wish you went way bigger than you did. But that's just, it just happens anytime with any trade. But So I ended up making money on the trade, but not as much money as I could have, and obviously the options were massively incorrect. So they were trading around 56% vol when the move was from 23 to, a max low move yesterday at 19 in that 8-day time frame, which is indicative of implied volatility around 147%, right? Because we get about $2 for the call, $2 for the put, puts us at a $4 straddle. Now, for one reason or another, it's not reflected in the implied volatility. Implied volatility is still hovering around 52%, right? And the April implied volatility is hovering underneath or at 50%. Okay, I mean this is pretty surprising here, and I think the best proxy to look at what to expect from the Snapchat IPO and expected future moves would be to look at some recent IPOs and how they moved. And here's Facebook's IPO, came to market at about 104 billion, so it's about 5 times bigger than Snapchat's IPO is, or I'm sorry, 4 times bigger than Snapchat's market cap, IPO. And you can see we get some crazy moves within the first, a couple weeks. It sheds over 25%, loses more than 25 billion in market cap. An entire Snapchat just gone. And then we get a couple, like a 10% move lower, 10% move higher within the first few weeks of trade. And this is a 6-week look at Facebook. Not to be outdone, along comes Twitter with a similar market cap to Snapchat IPO. And you can see this thing's putting in some like 5% candles in the first couple weeks. And then within the first 6 weeks, it's off to the races. This thing takes off for almost 50%, increases its market cap by 10 billion or something like that. Absurd. And I think Twitter's probably the best proxy for Snapchat. I'm not saying it's going to trade. Snapchat will trade like this. I just think that the future volatility of Snapchat will be similar in nature to Twitter. Whether it trades up, whether it trades lower, I don't really know. I'm just expecting it to be comparable to the way Twitter traded in the first 6 weeks of it being open. Alibaba came to market with a market cap around 170 billion, so that's about 7 times greater than Snapchat's. And you can see this was equally volatile. Not equally volatile, but relatively volatile for a company that's 170 billion market cap. And you can see this thing's opens around 95. Within a couple weeks, it's down, trading near 85, and then hangs around the $87 level, and then takes off, hits $100 a couple weeks later. Moves more than 10%, and that's again $170 billion company. Then GoPro came to market. I think it was around 3 billion, is what its market cap was when it hit the market. I'm not 100% certain about that, so it's a lot smaller than Snapchat, and you'd expect this to be more volatile. And you can see this has some pretty decent volatility in it, putting in some huge 10% candles here, and then you have some pretty decent swings throughout the first 6 weeks of trading, where it's covering a 10% move within a couple weeks. So I think these are pretty good proxies to look at to, how you might expect Snapchat to trade by April expiry, April monthly expiration. And then on top of that, the quiet period ends April 11th, right? So that's when a bunch of the underwriters and the banks, they can come out with their research reports or whatever they have, and the company's quiet period's up, so I'd expect some increased volatility then. And then on top of that, CNBC is saying that the CNBC article here is saying in April there will be another milestone that will be sure to move Snap stock. Its first quarterly earnings report. There's no date set yet, but the company's on a traditional calendar, so it should come next month. However, I'm calling shenanigans on that because the options market says that's not happening. The volatility is marked at pretty much 50% across the board in April here. So that doesn't look like it's pricing in earnings whatsoever. If earnings were priced in, I'd expect vol to be over 160% easy. There's absolutely no way it would be anywhere near 50%. So just based on the historical volatility of the stock, I think the Straddle's underpriced. Just based on its historical volatility moves, I think it's going to cover the April Straddle that's currently priced in the 12.4% move. And then if you throw in that the quiet period expires within that April Straddle time, and if you have anything earnings related, outlook, anything whatsoever, I think the stock is just going to move big one way or the other. I think I would be tremendously surprised if it does not cover the April Straddle by expiration. It already took out the weekly Straddle in 2 days, and it took out the monthly Straddle, the April monthly Straddle, in 8 days. So I don't see why you can't take out a Straddle again in 32 days. But that's just me. I could be mistaken. I suppose we'll find out on April 21st. Take care.